Good morning, Briggs Equipment. It's Steve Lindsay here from Service Genie. Thanks for taking the time to view this webinar. We have a brief presentation this morning followed by a demonstration of our software. You're more than welcome to ask questions on our message board during the session. The reason we are running this webinar specifically for Briggs Equipment is because not only are you in our core market, but we've been tracking you as a business for a while. My colleagues have met with some of you in the past, and we're aware that you've been growing by acquisition over the years. And in fact, you've bought one of our customers, Northern Forklifts. Now, we don't want to be presumptuous about any issues you may or may not have with your current systems, but we've worked with similar companies who expanded through acquisition and wanted to share some of the challenges we've seen with these similar businesses. Now, if some of these challenges are familiar to you, there are some useful thoughts on how we've addressed them. So this is a busy slide and is an illustration of how systems tend to proliferate as businesses grow over time. So systems can often be connected, but lack the depth of integration, which leads to gaps in data or processes. So often the users can be frustrated with accessing lots of different systems, entering data multiple times, and generally wasting time, resulting in a lack of trust and confidence in the information. So what happens when companies buy new businesses? So often new acquisitions are made not only because they are good businesses, but the purchaser believes there are efficiency improvements to be achieved by streamlining systems and processes. Taking out any unnecessary wasted time and cost as an example. The challenge is, how do you implement these common group standard processes quickly and cost effectively while minimizing any impact on customers and the employees of the acquired business? So traditionally, companies' experiences of this integration are not as easy as they originally planned. There's lots of complex system architectures to consider, multiple business stakeholders, and often companies are left in limbo supporting multiple costly legacy systems and processes which they know are not fit for purpose, but are they waiting for the right time to tackle the project. However, as always, technology is moving forward, and what was a big, painful job has become easier with the development of cloud-based solutions and integration platforms. As a first step, companies can address some of these issues by consolidating as many systems into a single web-based materials handling specific ERP platform. So that's a single platform that can handle and meet materials handling specific requirements for sales, hire, and service. So Service Genie is a third generation materials handling ERP that's been designed as a web-based system from first principles and has been combined with 30 years of knowledge and experience of materials handling requirements. The benefits of web-based solutions are now well publicized and becoming the norm across a lot of industries. There's no need for any server hardware. If acquisitions are made, then processes can be rolled out quickly and easily. And because it's cloud-based systems, it takes away any headaches around security, remote working, and uptime to help companies meet business continuity plans. So the responsibility, the security, and the system resilience lies with us. The second step is using an open integration platform. So this means companies can mix best of breed applications that are fit for purpose and integrate them cost effectively with proven off-the-shelf integrations. We selected Jitterbit as our platform of choice because of the breadth and quality of their links to most software systems. So how does this benefit the business as a whole? So one of the end goals of these types of projects is often providing a comparative advantage against the market, firstly through efficiency gains, and secondly through providing a platform for growth. So often common benefits can be measured include a reduction in operational costs, a reduction in time taken to roll out and adopt new standardized processing, and also the ease of generating reports which can help identify areas for improvement and avoid issues before they occur. The end game is making people's work lives more enjoyable and productive by automating manual tasks while helping their company beat the competition. Lastly, from a user's point of view, they can carry out tasks quicker with more confidence and ultimately get more work done. So rather than accessing multiple systems, they can focus on their day job. They have a single point of entry, which reduces manual errors and gives the users the confidence that reports are accurate and that they can trust them. So let's have a look at the software. We're going to show you a quick overview of how transparent the data is in the system, and then some examples how this information can be brought to the user through the business intelligence functionality. And then I'm going to hand over to my colleague Adrian, who will take you through an example process of raising, scheduling and completing a thorough examination. And this will give you a chance to see both our desktop and mobile software applications. So I'm going to switch across to my software now. So this is my home page. It can be tailored by the user to display the programs, functions that I use regularly. And I have also alerts pushed to me by the system, again, tailored by the user. We have KPIs here, which work on a red, amber, green basis, depending on the conditions being met. So giving us a live view of our operations and alerting us to issues so we can address them before they hurt us. We've also got an example of what we call self-service reports here. So we have full transparency within the system using our business intelligence self-service reporting. So you can report and display any piece of data within the system. So that can be displayed in any format which is most relevant for the information, whether that be charts, scatter graphs, heat maps, and so on. So these are real-time and interactive. So I've got a chart here listing my top accounts. I've got a dial on the bottom showing jobs which are overestimated hours, but I'm now going to expand into a pie chart here that again we've developed ourselves with self-service reporting, and it's displaying the job priorities for the last quarter within the business. So these job priorities are user defined. So we've got a reactive breakdown work, service work, and critical and monitoring. So it'd be interesting to understand this quarter, we've had a number of critical jobs, what those critical jobs were. So we can drill down to any piece of data sat behind this pie chart. So let's have a look. Is there a particular customer where we've had critical issues? So nearly 80% of those critical issues were with Honda. Is there a particular piece of equipment that we're having an issue with at Honda? So we'll drill down there. It looks like fork truck 31 has had 17 issues this quarter. That's a hell of a lot. So let's drill down to there and see whether we managed to fix those first time as an example. It looks like a majority, over 80% of those were fixed first time. So there might have been simple things to resolve. But the ones which are difficult, is there anybody you can go and talk to that will give us more information? They're going to speak to the completed engineer. So that's Adam Davis. So within a couple of seconds, we've got highlights of issues with the business, but we've been able to drill down and get real information about what's happening with our operations. As well as our self-service reporting, we have a raft of standard reports within the business intelligence module, and I'm going to take you to a revenue cost analysis report, which is a snapshot of our sales cost and profit. I want to select a time period here, so we're going to have a look at the data for this month. I want to apply that, and it's gone away to look at that information. So this report gives us a very high level understanding of our revenue, cost, profit and margin for this month. It allows us to look at this information by particular jobs, by parts, labour, travel, our cost codes, which we can define ourselves, service work hire, and asset sales, and so on and so on. So very quickly, we've got some high level numbers here, an indication of the health and performance of our business, and then we can drill down into the numbers behind that to start looking at getting some insight into the detail as well. So not only can we do that as a business as a whole, but we can run these numbers on a branch basis, a group, a division, by a particular customer, a site within a customer, a particular manufacturer, a particular asset itself, a particular forklift, particular contract, even looking at how profitable our engineers are generating sales and profit, and down to sales orders as well. So at this point, I want to hand across to my colleague, Adrian Clark, who's going to take you through an example thorough examination process.
Okay, so I'm basically going to go through how we look at pre-planned work. In this instance, it's going to be a thorough examination. So we're going to locate the contract, we're going to locate the piece of equipment that has the work scheduled for it. We're going to raise that job, put it in the scheduler, give it to an engineer, and have him complete that on the mobile device. So, excuse me. So quickly, we just go straight into the service schedule. This is a list of all the contracts that we have and all the assets that are due a service of some type. So that could be a standard, 1,000-hour service, or it could be a statutory examination. As in this case, it could be a thorough examination. We do link directly with CFTS, so our system is directly integrated with their systems, and our system will then send a report every month of all the thorough exams that have been completed, so they can bill accordingly. The view that we can see here, we have a traffic light system, so basically what it's doing is it's telling me that there are some jobs that are overdue. There are some that are due within 1 week, 2 weeks, or due within a month, and we can easily filter that by clicking on any of these icons at the top. So if we look at B&Q here, if we hit the expand button, it will then show me all the pieces of equipment that are on this particular contract, and anything that is due or overdue will be coloured accordingly. So in this instance, I'm going to raise a thorough exam for this piece of equipment. So we can see lots of information here. We can see the description, the model, the make, the account name, the service date, the preferred engineer, what service level it is, what type of service, how many people are required, and the status of that piece of equipment. And if we want to, we can get more information from the right-hand side. So for instance, we can get a job history, or we can edit this particular piece of equipment. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on this piece of equipment here and raise the thorough examination. There are a lot of other features in here I can do. So for instance, if I need particular parts, I can raise a purchase order from here. I can raise the job as an unissued job, put it as scheduled for a specific engineer, or give it directly to the engineer. But what I'm just going to do at the moment is raise it as an unissued job. And then I'm going to view that in the service scheduler. So that will bring the job into the service scheduler. Currently, it will filter all of the jobs in the list to the specific job that I've just added. I can view other jobs, and again, we have a colour code here to define whether the job is unissued, as in this case. So we've just raised it, we've not done anything with it. Whether it will be scheduled, so that is basically a job that has a date and a time, but it has not been given to the engineer. We can look at all the issued jobs. So they're jobs that have a date, have a time, and the engineer can see them on their mobile device. We can look at all the completed jobs, so fairly self-explanatory, and cancelled, or we can click all. A few other things to note in this screen as well. We have SLAs, so basically it's a countdown clock that tells me, am I going to hit my agreed date and time with the customer or not. So in this case, as you can see, these are red, so we've gone over that target date and time, and this one at the moment currently is green, indicating that we still have some time. This screen is actually 3 screens and can be spread over multiple monitors. So if we hit the icon here, it will pop the map out into a separate browser, and if we hit the icon at the bottom here, it will put the diary into a separate browser, which can then be put on separate monitors. So we can change the real estate of either of these to suit the resolution of our screen that we're using. So it gives us a bit of flexibility. Okay, so a few other minor features in here. Obviously what we can do is we can click on one or more jobs and we can plot them in the map on the right hand side. So if we highlight the jobs that we want to look at and then we click the map icon, it will then show us all of those jobs with the push pins. We can hover over and it will tell us what the site is specifically, and if we click on that site, it will then show us what jobs are logged to that specific site. This is Google Maps, so it will basically allow us to do pretty much anything that Google Maps will do. So we can zoom in, we can zoom out, we can see the satellite view, we can even use the stick man should we wish. We can further use the map to plot where our engineers are. So again, if we come down to the bottom left-hand side and we hit the map icon here, it's going to tell me where my engineers are based on their last activity. So as you can see, Stephen's up near Blackpool, working on one job as we see. Okay, so the job that we're gonna schedule is pretty straightforward. All we do is we can actually filter this list, by the way. So we can filter based on pretty much any criteria that you see here. You can also do it by engineer. And you can also save your filters either for yourself or company-wide. It's worth noting that in this screen view that we see here, I have a selected amount of columns. However, there are a lot of columns that you can choose, and you can dictate which bits of data you have on your screen. So hopefully there should be enough there to suit pretty much everybody. To give the job to an engineer, we simply pick the job that we want, we drag it, and we drop it onto the mobile device. We drop it into the engineer's calendar. Here it's just telling me that I've chosen a different time to what was specified on the job. So it's just basically allowing me to overrule that specific date. So if I now go to the mobile device, this is basically what the engineer will see. So we can see the job as it's come onto the mobile device. We just quickly click on the job, we issue it, and then that arrives on the mobile device. So there's various bits of functionality in here. Obviously way too much to go into detail at this particular point in time, but there are various features such as the engineer being able to request holiday or sick leave. They can raise new calls, so they can create their own jobs on site. They can also do full quotes. All of these quotes, as Steve may have mentioned, will appear up in the notification section for somebody to authorize. So if an engineer does create a job quotation on site, then somebody does have to check it, make sure that they're happy with it, and then they can obviously send that on to the required customer. If I go into this particular job, I have pre-filled most of this in because obviously the amount of time it takes to fill in a specific form, it makes it a little quicker. But in the job, the engineer can dictate whether they're travelling to or working on a job. In this instance, I'm going to say I'm working on this job. Every action that an engineer completes on the mobile device is date and time stamped, but it is also geotagged, which is how you can show the location of an engineer based on his last activity. The system will keep an accurate record to the second of his working time, from the beginning of the day until the end, but it will bill the appropriate time to that customer. So if an engineer has took 37.5 minutes to travel to a specific site, it will show 37.5 minutes in his timesheet within the system, but it will bill the appropriate time to the customer. So it might roll up to the nearest 15 minutes and therefore bill the customer 45 minutes. On the home screen of the job, there's obviously customer information. The engineer can view additional documentation on the based in the system, should he need to. He can see the reason for going out, and in this case, it's a thorough examination, the priority of the job. He can also view additional job notes or documents. Also, as a standard, if it's been set up against that piece of equipment, the engineer can see what services that piece of equipment has, and the parts required to complete that service. Further to that, it will show the quantity of those parts on the engineer's van, the quantity at the depot, and the quantity required in order to perform each of these specific services. And then at the bottom, there is a list of just general related parts of that piece of equipment. On the equipment tab, excuse me, the engineer can see the equipment detail, change that piece of equipment if the job was raised on the wrong asset, view the assets documentation and full job history, and also edit this particular piece of equipment's details. So for an example would be if there was no barcode on this particular piece of equipment, the engineer could add one once they were on site. So automatically linked to the job is the required test. So whether that's a test or whether that's a service, that will be on the job already waiting for the engineer. The engineer can add any test or calibration by clicking this button and then choosing any of the appropriate examination tests for that specific piece of equipment. But obviously this is a thorough exam. I've already pre-filled in some of this, so I'll just untick not required. So in here we can state why we're doing the thorough exam. Then we can add details, and some of these details are mandatory and some are not. So the engineer won't be able to complete this particular test if they don't actually fill in all the details. So I'll just quickly go through and fill all of this information in. And one of the handy things that we have in here is that the system will tell the engineer how far through the test they are, should they need to suspend it and go back to it at a later date. So I'll just quickly fill in all this information. So as you can see here, it tells me how complete each one of these sections are, and then the engineer can go in and fill all of this information in. Anything that's not applicable can be listed as so. So for example, if he does come across a fault, he can hit fault and then it will give him more options. So for example, I can put in here that it's rusty. Then I can put a time frame on there. So I can say whether it needs to be done now or in a certain amount of time, or none if it's applicable, which I will add in this case. It will also then tell the engineer that there has been a fault detected, and that will basically dictate whether or not they can issue a certificate. Now, obviously, in some instances, there may be a fault detected that doesn't render the piece of equipment unworthy for use. So they can still continue to give them the certificate should it be required, which is what I'll do in this particular case. I can say whether there's any other tests been performed, and then I can do my competent person's declaration. So in this instance, I'm going to say no faults have been detected, although obviously we've added one, and then it's going to give me the ability to generate a certificate. I can add the dates of the last service and the next service, add any notes should I wish, and then complete that test. Again, I can add parts should I wish, and those can be barcoded. The system will log my working time automatically, and as you can see at the bottom there, it's accruing time. I can then add work done. So, for example, I can say thorough exam completed. Add that as a note. But I can also add an image, either one that's already on the mobile device, or I can take an image. So if I put boot up the camera and take a picture, so I can save that to the job, but I can also further annotate this particular image. So I can put labels on should I wish. And again, add that as public or private if we don't want the customer to see the details. The engineer can then complete the job. He can add the current running hours for that piece of equipment. So this is a manual entry, but we can also link to telematic systems and automatically push that data into the system. Incidentally, services can then be triggered automatically based on running hours in real time, as opposed to date-based or manually entering hours into the system in some way. Then we can obviously add the customer's name, customer's contact information. The customer can then sign. And we also then have a satisfaction check that the customer can fill in as well. These can be reported in real time again, giving you notifications, emails and reports. The engineer can then sign. Review the last bit of information with the customer if required. Choose his next activity, and in which case I'm going to go on to a break. Once it gets complete, as long as he has internet connectivity, that will go straight across the internet, straight into the system and complete the job in the desktop software. Now, it doesn't matter if the engineer doesn't have internet connectivity, the information will stay on the device and will transmit and receive information as soon as he gets that information back. So when the job is complete and it comes back into the system, these icons start to change. So as you can see here, we have a speech bubble telling me that there is notes that I can view against that particular piece of equipment. But it is also telling me with the paperclip that there are documents attached. So I can click on the paperclip and then I can see all the images and the job sheets that were completed on the mobile device by the engineer. I can make these visible in the customer web portal, so the customer can have access to these should you wish. So for instance, I can have a look at the image that we took, and I can see the annotation. But importantly, I can see the job sheet and any completed tests. So in this instance, it is an engineer's report. These documents, incidentally, can be manipulated directly by yourselves. So everything in the system is self-service. So you can create these documents, have them styled in any way you want, or even create them specifically for customers. Obviously, all the information such as signature capture is there, and in this instance, we've got the CFTS approved thorough examination report. All the details filled in. The fault is highlighted to bring attention to it. And then at the bottom, obviously, because we passed this particular piece of equipment, we have the examination certificate. This will report automatically to CFTS, and then CFTS will bill you accordingly should you be a CFTS member. But obviously, you have the ability to create your own specific forms should you wish. So I'm now going to hand over back to my colleague Stephen, who will just wrap up. Who is on mute. Stephen, you're on mute.
Thank you, Adrian. Thanks for your time this morning, guys, and I hope you found some interest in some of the things we highlighted. You can get more information at servicegenie.com, and you'll please feel free to contact me on my mobile number or at my email address stephen.lindsay@servicegenie.com. I'll hopefully speak to you soon.